Good morning, students. We are studying here the resources, the chapter resources, and yesterday we saw extensively, rather, what was the meaning of international resources, right? How different international resources are from the domestic resources. Now, of course, we studied that in a bit of detail. So today we start on the basis of status of development. How do you differentiate different kinds of resources? So let's start. Now, potential resources, resources which are found in a region but have not yet been utilized. For example, Western Ghats of India, particularly Rajasthan and Gujarat, have enormous potential for the development of wind and solar energy, but so far these have not been developed properly. Um, yeah, so, guys, this is very self-explanatory. Not much to say, but I would just like to add one important fact here: that probably in Rajasthan and Gujarat, these resources lie unutilized because probably sometimes our policies have not been favorable for these industries. Sometimes we've been lazy ourselves, but then there are other different parts of the world in whereby they are also very, very mineral rich and resource rich, but those countries have not been able to utilize those resources properly. For one very important reason is because those nations do not have political stability. There is a massive law and order problem, and that is the reason why, because of the massive law and order issues, there is no political stability, there is no social stability. That is the reason why it is not able to neither attract investment, and neither those countries are able to come up with any policies or inspire their people to actually make these resources to their best advantage. So, developed resources. The next point, resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization. The development of resources depends on technology and the level of feasibility. Stock. Materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings do not have the appropriate technology to access these, are included among stock. For example, water is a compound of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen can be used as a rich source of energy, but we do not have the advanced technical know how or the knowledge to use it for this purpose. Hence, it can be considered as stock. So, the same thing can be, students, said about, say, petroleum. Now, oil is found in many parts of the world and in many countries as well. But the point is, those countries do not have the resources, the technological know-how to really extract oil from within their own geographies, because getting water, digging for water, on a piece of land is something else, and digging for oil on a piece of land is a different dimension altogether. Reserves are the subset of the stock which can be put into use with the help of existing technical know-how, but the use has not yet been started, and these can be used for meeting future requirements. River water can be used for generating hydroelectric power, but presently it is being utilized only to a limited extent. Thus, the water in the dams, forests, etc. is a reserve which can be used in future. Guys, this is not very difficult to understand. Development of resources. Resources are vital for human survival as well as for maintaining the quality of life. It is believed that resources are free gifts. So, guys, this is now we are entering a very tricky topic and a very important topic here. Now, earlier the resources, that's what it is saying. Earlier, the resources were considered to be something that were the free gifts of nature, and as a result, human beings used to use them and hunt them indiscriminately, and this has led to the following major problems: depletion of resources for satisfying the greed of a few individuals, accumulation of resources in a few hands, which in turn divided the society into two segments, that is, haves and have nots. Indiscriminate exploitation of resources has led to global ecological crises such as global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. An equitable distribution of resources has become essential for the sustained quality of life and global peace. So, guys, what it is trying to tell you essentially is that in the early times, that is even till 19th century, 19th century, everything that every natural resource was considered to be something that is free, and something that was free, that could be used indiscriminately and with no responsibility at all, and no one really cared what it did to the environment, right? It was very, very kind of, because you had to understand, students, those were the early days of industrial revolution, right? Industrial revolution, when it really ushered in a completely new kind of living in 17th and 18th century, and mostly in 18th century, for most of the world. And because the industrial revolution was new, suddenly people were lapping up all the natural resources around them without, because they thought, yet yes, it is available, so it's okay, so why to worry about it. It was considered to be free, it was considered, and people considered it to be their right. There was nothing called legal right or illegal. They thought that yes, this is the gift of nature, this is the gift of God, and I can use it, whatever, whether it was river water, mountains, minerals, coals, whatever it was. It was only later when and this is what it was, these businessmen and these industrialists, they started using it. And only later the people got conscious about the fact that yes, they were now literally occupying, and they were now controlling these natural resources. Now that cannot be allowed, because the complete natural resource of a nation or of a geography cannot be allowed to be confined within the hands of a few. And only then people got aware about, okay, that yes, these things actually belong to the state, right? And because they belong to everyone and have to be used carefully and judiciously. But then, yes, students, with the kind of population that we have, global population, India, of course, we are top of the charts after China. And we, of course, would be overtaking them soon, because we would like to be on top when it comes to the population, that is, at least. But there are other parts of the world as well who have been using and plundering these natural resources, and that is the reason why we have come to a level whereby you have huge amounts of environmental issues that are now coming up. And you must have seen over the last 2 3 months on television and social media that because of this corona crisis, when the whole global industry and activity came to a standstill, the animal, the nature has been repairing itself, right? The animal life has been repairing itself. The jungles, the rivers, the forests, everything is, the whole mother nature is repairing herself. And that actually gave you an idea about what we have, the rampage that we have done over the last 200 and 300 years to this environment is kind of, we have actually created havoc with it. And that is the reason why you see this topic, Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, and that is the reason why in the year 1992, more than 100 heads of states met at Rio de Janeiro in Brazil for the first international Earth Summit, because everyone could see the problem, everyone could see that we've actually pushed things to the limit, and some solution has to be worked out, some cooperation mechanism needs to be worked out, some kind of a concerted effort was needed to ensure that, if of course no one can turn back the clock, but at least to minimize the damage, at least to kind of come up with certain rules of the game which were much more environment friendly. So the summit was convened for addressing urgent problems of environmental protection and social economic development at the global level. The assembled leaders signed the Declaration on Global Climatic Change and Biological Diversity. The Rio Convention endorsed the Global Forest Principles and adopted Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development in the 21st century. Now, what is this Agenda 21? It is the declaration signed by the world leaders in 1992 at the United Nations Conference on environmental and development, which took place. So this is basically the declaration, which is known as Agenda 21, and which aims at achieving global and sustainable development, guys. So this is essentially about, um, of course, no one was saying that yes, the machines should stop, the factories should close down. No one was suggesting that, because that is important, because the earth has the responsibility to feed billions of people, right? So no one was suggesting that, but what they were suggesting was that yes, these things need to be done much more responsibly, much more stricter environmental rules and regulations should be introduced in all the countries, so that the damage to the environment is minimum, and also introduce more environmental friendly technologies, guys. Like for example, if you look at your own if you look at the car in your house, or or your two-wheelers, guys, those two-wheelers and cars conform to very strict emission norms, the exhaust which kind of comes out. And earlier in 90s and in early 2000, it used to be all black smoke. Now if you actually look at the exhaust of a car, unless if it's a very old diesel car, that is, you would see that you can barely see the smoke. It is all now because you have all very strict emission standards. It started with Bharat 1 and then Bharat 2. Now today we are in Bharat 5. So we've actually made a huge amount of progress where technology has been becoming much more, not just fuel efficient, but also has been conforming to very strict emission standards, and emitting far less smoke and polluting gases than what it used to 10, 15, or 20 years ago. So things have been changing. The same with factories. The factory owners, that all they did was they just used to have a chimney, and whatever black smoke was being emitted was not their headache. But now the whole production process has been kind of adapted, and it has been converted in such a fashion, and it has been devised in such a fashion to ensure that whatever manufacturing is happening, the emission, the last piece of emission, the last smoke which gets emitted in the air, the open environment, is much less poisonous today, because all the smoke that gets emitted, students, has to be first treated within the factory itself before it actually gets released in the atmosphere. So all that has happened, and it has happened because people have realized that yes, it has to happen. The time has come, and it has reached alarming proportions. So that is what it is. Tomorrow we shall start resource planning. Thank you.